This is the IDP After Show.
Hey all, Jace here with the IDP After Show, and we're back with another episode, alternating as we do with the IDP show during the NFL offseason to bring you guys and girls all the content you need to kick ass in your IDP leagues. Now, we obviously spend a lot of time looking forward, but today we're going to be casting our minds back as we redraft the 2024 rookie class. And we're going to flesh out some of the lessons we learned from last year's fantasy draft and talk about how we can apply that going forward with the 2025 class. And who better to help me break this down than two of the best IDP minds and good people too, writer and ranker of Football Guys fame, Joey the Tooth, Joseph Hagan, and senior writer, ranker, and IDP director. A bit of a mouthful there, John. Dynasty Nerds, John Glosser. Guys, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Yeah, doing well, doing well. Still reeling from the Super Bowl a little bit.
Glosser, I haven't seen you in a little bit, buddy. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, we got together on a mock draft, but we got another one coming up. But it was nice to see your face again for the first time in a while. And Jace, thanks for having us. I'm really excited to kind of get into this with you.
My pleasure, guys. As we were saying before we came on here, it's a topic that I'm really excited about. Love mock draft season. There's always some lessons to learn and some lessons to kind of bear in mind from the year before, again, which is why we're here to talk about this 2024 class. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see. I think thinking back to the Super Bowl as I was going through my rankings, how some of these rookies that kind of did emerge late season are going to be coming into play here, and where we're going to be ranking them relative to their peers. Did you have fun putting together your ranks ahead of this?
Yeah.
being an IDP guy, no, because there's a lot of offense. Right. But it's a fun exercise. Kind of look back and what you thought you knew, and then you realize you didn't really know much at all.
There wasn't too much. There wasn't a whole lot of standout IDP from the 2024 draft. Like, there were some good players, but there wasn't. I mean, in recent drafts, it's been like kind of a plethora of IDP where that's almost like end of the first round through the second, and that's like your sweet spot to grab some of the best IDP. But this time, it's kind of like, all right, where do they fall?
Yeah, and just relative to some of the other guys, one QB. We'll get into the format in a second, but it's been a lot of fun for me. Constantly shuffling players around, and I had a good idea as to where I wanted them in the first place. So yeah, it's been a fun exercise. So yeah, I mean, with this in mind, let's get into this redraft. Now, we're going to be talking offense and defense here combined. We're going to be basing our selections on a format that uses a 1 QB, 11 on defense, 11 on offense, and big 3 scoring. And we're going to take it in turns to make our picks. We're going to get through 3 rounds, 36 players overall. We're going to kick off with Joey first, then John, then myself. A decision I'm now regretting after looking down my list at the drop-off and the players I really wanted. But yeah, it is what it is. I've kind of backed myself into this corner. I'm just going to live with it, and that's my excuse up front for why these guys' teams are going to be better than mine. So, Joey, why don't you get us started with the player you think is the most valuable fantasy player and the guy you would have taken with the 101 in hindsight?
I'm going to go with tight end Brock Bowers. So tight end premium, the tight end position was honestly crap last year. Like, it was just so hard that there week to week, there wasn't really anybody at the top except for rookie Brock Bowers. Like, he had 112 receptions, almost 1,200 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. I'm pretty sure he was the tight end 1 as a rookie. Like, that's unheard of. So it's got to be Brock Bowers in a tight end premium in a position group that's just incredibly weak. I got to go Brock Bowers. And basing that, like, I still wouldn't really go tight end first in any other rookie draft unless it's like an absolutely amazing player, because it's such a volatile position. But watching what Brock Bowers did last year, going back, I would definitely take him 101.
Yeah, I hate you. It is what it is. It's fine. I'll get over it, and we'll be friends again at some point, I'm sure. But for now, for some reason I thought he might fall to me at 3. John, Brock is gone.
So to further add to your pain, I'm going to take Malik Neighbors here. Neighbors was, we were real close between Neighbors and Harrison in the, preseason or pre-draft. And then, what Neighbors was able to do with just pure dumpster juice at the quarterback position, you got to think that that's going to improve. The guy's legit every sense of the word, alpha one, wide receiver one. Looking forward if in my top 5 for dynasty wide receivers rank. So love being able to add him here. And to Joey's point on Bowers too, even if it wasn't tight end premium, that guy was so good last year. He might have just kind of still made you be like, all right, I'm essentially drafting a wide receiver at the tight end position. So we haven't had that in a long time.
Yeah, insanely good. Compares well against all wide receivers and not just rookies, which is saying something, right? He carried that offense and crap QB play. But yeah, Neighbors, slam dunk at 102. I love that pick. He was superb again, like you say, like crappy QB play. So
dumpster juice, I think he said.
Yes. Which leaves me with a choice to make, because I'm choosing here between production and the guy who was mine and most people's wide receiver one amongst the rookies last year. But I'm gonna go with, and these are 2 players who I did kind of move between 3 and 4 spot quite a lot in my rankings, as I mentioned to John earlier. But I'm gonna go with Marvin Harrison. And granted, it wasn't quite the year we wanted, at least in comparison to some of these other rookies taken after him. And certainly in comparison to the other guy I was considering taking in this spot, took a massive backseat to kind of Trey McBride, didn't he? But the talent, I think, is undeniable. I'd be very surprised if we weren't looking at 1,100 yards, 6 or more touchdowns, 80 or more receptions this year. I think he's insanely talented, and this was a real tough one for me, as I say, because the other guy who I suspect is going to go at 104 had much better production, and yeah, I'm not totally comfortable with this one, but I know that I look back and reflect upon this, and this is something that I'm going to be bearing in mind as I approach my rookie drafts this year. Once that draft is over and we will start looking at our rookie teams, how do we feel about them? And sometimes those decisions you make in the spur of the moment, those are the ones that come back to bite you. If I took the other guy, I don't think I'd like my team as much. I'm taking Marvin Harrison at 103.
All right. I dig it.
So yeah. Joey, back to you, 104.
It kind of makes it a tough decision, right? So I'm stuck between 2 guys. It's either Brian Thomas or Ladd McConkey. So I have to look at it, right? So as long as Trevor Lawrence, like, I don't feed into that all of a sudden the new rumor that the Steelers are trying to trade for Trevor Lawrence. As long as Trevor Lawrence stays in Jacksonville, it's going to be Brian Thomas. So I'm going to go with the fact that he's staying in Jacksonville, and I'm going to take Brian Thomas. He had 133 targets. It was like 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns as a rookie. That's pretty unheard of. I mean, granted, the rest of the receiving core isn't that good, but he took pretty much half of Evan Ingram's targets. Like, everybody was drafting up Evan Ingram like crazy, and it's just because he didn't have that much to compete with the year before. And Brian Thomas came in and instantly led the team in targets, receiving yards, and touchdowns. So I'm going to go Brian Thomas as long as he has Trevor Lawrence as his QB.
Yeah. And just so you know, that was the other guy I was struggling with at 103. And it'll be interesting to see how the 2 do compare this year, because they're both incredibly talented guys and quite different situations, I think.
Right.
But especially if Trevor Lawrence does end up going to the Steelers, as has been rumored.
Hope it doesn't.
Yeah, so do I. Seems unlikely to me, but kind of interesting point to take away from the last couple of days. So, John, 105. What are you thinking?
This is a run of wide receivers here, obviously. I think I'm going to pivot. I've been thinking about it and going through it. I'm going to pivot. I think I'm going to go Jaden Daniels. I know we're in, roughly around the middle of the first round, and it is 1 QB, but there's just too much to love there with Jaden. Like the way he played with Cliff Kingsbury staying another year. this is probably from an offensive weapon standpoint the worst he's ever going to see, and he put up phenomenal numbers. Was a top, I think, 8 fantasy player overall this year with IDP included. So there's too much to like there, and I mean, he's just so easy to root for as a human being too. So that part kind of factored in a little bit here with fantasy, but I'm probably going to be the only one who takes a quarterback in this round, but I mean, I'm happy with it right here, especially with the top dog wide receivers kind of going.
Yeah, that dual threat ability makes him more intriguing, more exciting, and more
I love how
he's
he's
single
like
QB systems.
How Daniels himself is like just changing the whole quarterback position with the way he trains and everything, using the AI and whatnot. Like,
yep.
It's absolutely amazing to me. Like, he's the first person to do it, and it obviously works for him. And he's been able to, his decision making is quicker. It's just like, he's evolutionizing the game himself as a rookie. It's amazing.
Yeah, and thinking about the guys around him as well. I know Diami Brown came on strong in the playoffs, but
right.
Otherwise it was Zach Ertz and Terry McLaurin, and they've got a huge amount of roster space, cap space. They are going to be taking another wide receiver, or maybe in the market for some of these other big name wide receivers. T. Higgins, anyone?
They're going to trade for Debo. It's going to break my heart seeing Debo go.
Yeah. That kind of makes Daniel's ceiling even more impressive. As with all quarterbacks, we kind of do expect progression every year, don't we, from some of these rookies, especially if they've been good. We expect them to become great in year 2. That's not always the way, but it would be a surprise if Daniels didn't become even better going into year 2. Because he's such a mature guy. He's got such a level head on his shoulders. He's got his mum keeping him honest and keeping those girls away from him. So yeah, it's a good one. 106. I am quite happy to be left with this guy's Lad McConkey. Is I'm a Chargers fan, so I watched a lot of him this year, and he's an interesting one. I expected him to do well. I didn't expect him to do as well as he did, become Herbert's kind of go-to guy. I thought that Herbert would kind of be spreading the ball around a lot more than he did. Thought Joshua Palmer would do better than he did. But yeah, McConkey did what he did. It was incredible. Got better and better as the year went on. 82 receptions, 1,200 touchdowns. That would be incredible. 1,200 yards. Thereabouts. 7 touchdowns. His ADOT was fantastic amongst rookie wide receivers as well. I expect the Chargers to get some more wide receiver help in the draft. Quentin Johnson wasn't quite getting it done last year, all those drops. But I think that doesn't necessarily hurt McConkey's value going forward. He's in that slot role. He's going to see high volume. He's just incredible, I think. So, 106, very happy with this one. 107 then, Joey.
It shouldn't be this hard, but I think I'm just going to stick with it. I'm going to go with Xavier Worthy. I mean, he showed that he's obviously with Travis Kelce's role diminishing a little bit. He's now Patrick Mahomes' favorite target, and they had good chemistry in that second half in the Super Bowl. They had pretty decent chemistry throughout his rookie season, and his role just got bigger and bigger as the season went on. And he's so explosive. So I think I have to go with Xavier Worthy right here.
He was one of the ones that was going to be more intriguing for me in terms of where he went, because a point that John made earlier on to me before we came on, watching how these guys do towards the end of their year, you can't just look at their yearly finish. You have to watch that progression and see how well they do over the course of, the second half of the season, and certainly for some players into the playoffs. And Worthy, for me, was one of those guys that really excels when you do just that. He was incredible. I know there's a lot of moving parts there. What's going on with Kelce, and obviously Rice coming back, but I feel like that chemistry he's got with Mahomes is definitely going to help him going forward. So if there was a takeaway, and this is something I think that you agree with, if you're taking him here at 107, it's that try and remain patient, or as patient as you can do. Not always easy when you're working with those smaller rosters in fantasy, but some of these guys, they might not be amazing out of the gate, but if you really believe in the talent, try and keep hold of them, because we can be too impatient sometimes and then live to regret it afterwards.
Absolutely.
think that's
All
the
right.
guy too. With as long as Andy Reid's there, like that's the Macklin, Deshaun Jackson, the guy he tried and thought he was getting in Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, and he finally, I think, got that guy, and a crazy athlete, and to your point, insanely explosive. Just I see the ceiling being super high on a player like him.
For sure.
I love the
All right.
Deshaun Jackson comparison. That's good.
That's who he said he modeled his game on, isn't it? Everyone was comparing him to Hill,
Think so,
Tyreek Hill,
yeah.
because of obviously the Chiefs, the speed, etc. But Worthy, I believe, said
Yeah,
that,
I'm pretty
he
sure
viewed himself as
you're
a
on that.
Jackson type.
I dig it.
All right, John, we're at 108. What have you got?
We'll keep the receivers going. Rona Dunze, like it here. I think that offense opens up a lot with Ben Johnson coming in. I mean, he was pretty high after pre-draft too, even with Keenan Allen there. I think we expected more, a good amount from him. Did have flashes during the season, but I see it with Keenan gone now. DJ Moore has his role, but I think the Adunze Caleb Williams combo is going to be, something you want to invest in Dynasty. So I like that pick here, and look forward to seeing kind of what he does as a feeling like more of like a integral part of that offense versus kind of like a half wide receiver 2, half wide receiver 3 as he was last year, and kind of that coaching carousel that they had going on there of play calling and all that.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me to see him go there. Lots of moving parts. But yeah, Ben Johnson coming in, Keenan potentially going, or almost certain to be going. It's, I think the needle's pointing up for Adunze. Didn't quite, get to where we wanted him to get to last year. But yeah, talking about that patience thing, we believed in his talent. We know he's really talented. If Caleb Williams can play better, if the O-line can get some reinforcements, if Ben Johnson can bring some of that wizardry to Chicago, then yeah, we could definitely see Adunze take a big leap in year 2. I am going to take a running back at this point. And it's because I believe there is a bit of a drop off here from the receivers that we've taken already and the next group. Some of whom I know will emerge and play really well next year, but not quite on the same level as the guys we've just been taking there between 106 and 108. So I'm going to take Bucky Irving here. And he's a player who I just fell in love with. And this one kind of hurts to talk about because I loved him at this time last year. I really wanted to take him in my fantasy drafts. I missed out on him in my main league, I would call it, my home league perhaps, by just a couple of draft picks, and I was this close to trading for him. Forget what it was that we were talking about at the time, but whatever it was, I would have taken it. I would have given up more, looking back in hindsight at what Irving's gone on to do this year. 5.1 yards per average, super elusive, super productive. Yeah, love what he did last year, and I think, he's a value pick for me at this point as I look through the rest of the players I've got here.
I love the work ethic that was brought up about Bucky Irving too, as even after getting drafted was, Liam was saying he was like the first one in the building and last one to leave type stuff. You don't hear that about running backs hardly ever. So like, as talented as he was and as much as pre-draft that people wanted to pigeonhole him into just being a third down back or just being a pass catching back or whatever it is, or he couldn't pass block, he shut all that up last year, right? Like he outplayed Rashad White tenfold at times, was on the field in clutch situations down the stretch, and to your point before, right? Progression. As we saw the progression as the season went on, the trust levels were just off the charts for him in that Bucs offense. So there was games without Evans and Godwin that like literally all the passes were just going to the running backs and the tight ends, and he didn't disappoint. Really rewarded people that got him late in drafts, last year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just that for him to it was Rashad White to start the season, right? It was him. It was just him. And then Bucky Irvin started to work his way in. And the more Bucky Irvin worked his way in, it was just like all of a sudden White disappeared. And Sean Tucker kind of emerged for a game or two, but then it was just Bucky Irvin he was the constant from there in.
Yeah, and a good receiver as well.
Yeah.
He's got a good situation there too, right? His O-line is really good. so that you kind of got that reassurance that going into next year, he's going to be in a good position. And this maybe is a good point to start talking about, when we're talking about running backs, and again, thinking about lessons we could learn from previous years going into this year, or maybe like reinforcing some of those lessons that we know about. We do sometimes overlook the landing spot where running backs are concerned. And the best example in recent years has got to be Barkley, right? He's gone to Philly. He's looked like the player we all knew he could become. And that's not because he's all of a sudden become a much more talented player. It's because he's got that O-line blocking for him. And he would be the first to say that too. So maybe there's something more to be said for considering the landing spot for some of these running backs. Yes, believe in the talent, but maybe you could bump some of these players up a little bit if they do land with teams with solid or good offensive lines. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, Joey, we're at you, 110.
This might be a bit of a reach and a homer pick, but I'm going to go with Ricky Pearsall. So he started off the season getting shot. So that wasn't really a great way to start the season.
We shouldn't be laughing at that, but it's yeah.
He worked himself back in, and Brandon Ayuk goes down with a torn ACL. Now, it's a torn ACL and it had some MCL damage, so his status at the beginning of the season is unknown. Deebo Samuel just requested a trade. Juwan Jennings is 29, and he's entering the last year of his contract. So now you have Ricky Pearsall, who has first-round draft capital. He finished the season with 18 targets, 14 receptions, 210 yards, and 2 touchdowns in his last 2 games. So he's showed his explosiveness. He showed why they drafted him in the first round, and they're going to need him to step up. They need another receiver because you don't know when Ayuk's going to be ready. Jennings is going to be there, but for how long? And George Kittle's getting older too. Debo's gone. So they're going to need somebody to be explosive in that offense.
Sounds like even if the Debo trade doesn't happen, I was reading today that he's designated for a post-June 1 cut. I believe they'll save more money than they will even trading him. So, yeah, I love that point on Pearsall too. Like, he fits the offense to a T. It's just a matter of getting him on the field and keeping him on the field. And let's call it what it is. Like, Sam's in cap trouble, right? Playing that rookie wide receiver is going to help them other places if they still want to remain as, competitive and win a championship. So, and great skill player. I mean, I think we all know that catch at Florida in the swamp that still don't know how he came down with that one, but yeah, a very impressive athlete.
No arguments here. John, 111.
This one's tough. There's those wide receivers there that you kind of, but I'm gonna shake things up because we're an IDP podcast, right? So I'm gonna shout out to one of the goats, John Macri, to go with his boy Jared Verse here. Not much to say. Verse, defensive rookie of the year. Like we saw it, right? Like he was just impact player, right? Like and the Rams showing what you do when you invest in that defensive line and you hit on those picks, right? Like all those guys played really well. They're him off the edge. There was a few games, right, where like him versus the other edges in this class, and they're also really good. He had the game ability where I didn't think that we saw that so much from some of the other guys. But yeah, I'm gonna justify here the big 3 scoring that Jared Verse is going to be a guy to target in dynasties and an edge that you want going forward.
Absolutely.
First IDP has dropped. This is about where I imagine that was going to happen. What about you, Joey? What's your thoughts? Where did you think the first IDP would go?
I almost picked him actually, but I'm a huge 49ers fan, and I know they need a wide receiver. And just the way Pearsall finished his season, it was either Pearsall or it was going to be Jared Verse. Jared Verse, I was a big fan because I was so happy. He was my 101 at the beginning of the draft season last year, or he was after the combine. He was my 101, and I was like, it's that first game. I was like, oh, this looks good, and it just went the whole season. I was like, yes. I finally hit one. Rookie IDPs, they're tough, man. Like Leatu, the man is so good, but his rookie season wasn't that impressive stat wise. He still played well, but he was in a position where he was in a rotation. So it's like he's a great player, but he didn't show out as a rookie. So now people are like, oh, is he a bust? Well, no, he's obviously not a bust. He still played well, but he just didn't have as much playing time as Jared Verse. The thing with Jared Verse is he went in and he outperformed Byron Young, who also had a great rookie season and still had a good season last year, but Jared Verse outplayed him. So it's like, all right, this guy's something special.
Yeah. I was toying with taking him. In fact, depending on who John took at that point there, I was looking at 2 IDPs and 1 offensive player. Verse was one of those 2 IDPs. So I'm left choosing between 1 offensive guy and 1 other IDP who I'm sure you guys can guess at. But I'm gonna stick with the offensive guy here and choose Jalen McMillan with 112. And I was a bit slow on the uptake, really, I think, in terms of how well he was doing, to recognize, I guess, how well he was doing towards the end of the season there. Maybe it took 1 or 2 games for me to kind of like take a bit more notice of what he was doing. But he's a guy, we were talking earlier on about guys that finish strong, that are trending in the right direction, and certainly, wasn't considered amongst the best wide receivers in that rookie class. He was a late 3rd round pick, but yeah, he's in a great situation there. I believe Godwin's going and Evans is only on the hook for like another year. McMillan down the stretch there was absolutely on fire. I think he's a really talented player. It's in a really good spot. Again, same with Irving. He's got that offensive line blocking well for Baker, and I just think he's a really valuable pick, or a good value pick at this point.
Absolutely. 7 touchdowns in his last 5 regular season games. That's enough right there just to say, yeah, he's obviously one of Baker's favorite red zone targets.
Yeah, I love that pick too because of Godwin, right? Like, we saw him bounce back great from the last injury, but 2 of those in a short amount of time. Who knows when he's going to start the season? And Mike Evans, is as great as he is, he's definitely getting up there. So having a guy to be that explosive and the things you want in Dynasty, right? Good offensive line and solidity, something solidified at the quarterback position. That's going to justify some production for your wide receiver. So.
Yeah, it might seem odd of me to talk about offensive line when I'm talking up a wide receiver, but thinking back to the Roma Dunze situation earlier on, he would probably have done a lot better had Caleb Williams been upright more often, right?
Right.
So this is there's a lot to like about McMillan. It is that end of season run. Try not to get too caught up in the touchdowns because I know he's not going to score 2 touchdowns every game as he was towards the end of the year. But yeah, the talent is there. And looking at the other players around him, I feel like he's a safer choice, actually, than some of the other wide receivers who I even had ranked ahead of him going into last year. It wasn't by a huge amount, but yeah, he's a safer choice for me. So, Joey, take us into round 2. Who are you going to take at the top?
I'm kind of stuck between, do I want to go a quarterback or do I want to go with an IDP? I think I'm going to go with Bo Nix just because he proved that he's already a top 15 quarterback. I mean, he played great as a rookie. He had 3,700 yards, 29 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. 1 QB, but still, I mean, grabbing a QB that talent who's probably going to draft another wide receiver or get one in free agency, he's going to get more weapons. They're going to get him a running game. The offensive line's pretty decent as it is. They have a good defense, so I think Bo Nix is a good pick here at the top of the second.
Yeah, it pains me to see him do well because, again, Chargers fan, we've already got Mahomes in the division, and now, all of a sudden, Nix comes along and just blows our expectations out the water. He was just so steady. It's just really impressive to see a guy just come in and to be so consistent, and again, just to get better and better as the season went on. He's a fantastic player.
Similar to the kind of take that we had on Jaden, right? Dual threat, good with a brilliant mind as an offensive play caller, and probably the weapon to have throughout his rookie contract. So I like that pick as well.
Yep. John, over to you at 202.
All right, I was kind of flirting with this one for a little while. I'm going to go Xavier Legette. I do still like explosiveness. I really like what we saw from Bryce Young on that bounce back after the Andy Dalton portion where he kind of Yeah, it did. Like him coming back and some of those plays down the stretch, almost kind of beating the Chiefs there, and just some of those throws that you were like, why did we not know that Bryce Young could do this? Right. Like,
Right.
And Leggett just kind of being a freaking athlete, if they can keep that guy on the field, I mean, a gigantic mismatch, if they use him correctly. I definitely think that some things I would like to see him get a lot better at, but I'm not gonna, put everything out in his rookie season, because as we know, sometimes these guys take time, especially struggling new offense, learning a new offensive system, quarterback change, all that kind of stuff. But really like his upside there, and I think Carolina kind of likes what they have at wide receiver with a couple young guys developing, and Thielen, and they got their tight end and Jatavian Sanders last year. So I do kind of like the direction they're headed, and I liked what I saw from Canales when he was in Tampa Bay, and think that they can build something special there, at least to compete in that division, which seems to be wide open almost every year.
Right. And talking about Bryce Young real quick, like that felt so good. It's like it speaks a lot of why he went 101, right? So he has a terrible rookie season, starts off his second year terrible, loses his job to Andy Dalton. Just like what happened in those couple of games where he lost his starting job to, like, what did he learn in those couple of games to come back and actually look like a very good quarterback, right? So what did you learn? Like, who told you what in that time period to all of a sudden change that much? It just speaks a lot about Bryce Young.
It's a good point. And would what happened in his situation change? Has that changed your perception, or would that make you be maybe slightly more patient with some of these rookie quarterbacks?
Absolutely. I mean, even that his wide receivers, so he didn't have Thielen for a while. Deontay Johnson was in, out. He had rookie and Leggett. It's like he didn't have much, and then he had to sit for a couple of games. And it's like, did he just need that to clear his head and say, okay, I can still do this? And the fact that to be able to still have confidence in himself when nobody else did is amazing. It speaks a lot about his character.
To not get so down too, right? Like,
Right.
lose your job to a guy that is on the basically just kind of waiting to retire at this point. Like, exactly. And you're still able to learn something from that guy, take that as a mentorship, and be like, when I get my next chance, I'm gonna show you like why I was the first round, why I was the first overall pick and all that. So,
right.
But yeah, to Jason's point too, right? Like I think Tom Brady said it at one point during the year on one of the broadcasts this year. They expect these guys, these quarterbacks, to come in and how special they were in college, even if they're coming off a national championship. They expect them to come in, learn a new offense, and be great right away. They're not given a chance to develop. They're not given a chance to learn the offense and learn NFL defenses, which they're not seeing even in the SEC. We want to crown it as the best that there is out there. It's still not the NFL, right? So I think seeing those guys and letting those guys given a chance to develop and not say, I mean, let's be honest, everybody in Dynasty was on Bryce Young after his rookie year. Like, and that's, it's not fair, but like most of us are playing in super flex leagues, and you're sitting on Bryce Young before last year started. And then after week 1 happens, and I think he's horrific in that game, you're like, what should I do? I can't get anything for this guy now. Not talking, X amount of months later, and you're like, I'm pretty stoked. I got, a Bryce Young Leggett stack going into next year. So, great point.
Yep. Yeah. So moving on to 203, I'm quite excited with this pick because I've got a bunch of players in the same range at a multitude of different positions. But I'm going to take this guy slightly earlier than I was actually intending on taking him because of how the rest of the draft has fallen. I think one of you guys will probably take him before I do. Could be wrong, but I love Edgerrin Cooper. I think just how he trended towards the end of the year. I know he was a little bit inconsistent at times, and we do talk about trying to remain patient with these rookie linebackers. We did remain patient with him in the sense that he was kind of stuck behind Walker for a long, long time there. And it took an injury really for Cooper to get that full-time role that we could all see that his play warranted and deserved. But he was fantastic for a rookie. I think he's incredibly talented. He was everything for me that Junior Colson wasn't. And different situations, yes, injuries, it all plays a part. But yeah, what Cooper was able to do in his first year has got me very excited about what he can do going into year 2, year 3. I don't think there's much of a reason for pivoting to some of those other positions that I've got. There was a receiver that I was interested in. I'd be interested to see whether one of you guys takes him, but Cooper for me.
I almost took Cooper when I took Knicks. I was sitting there looking at it. I mean, he had I think it was 6 or more tackles in his last 8 games, including the playoffs. It was like in one of those games, I think he had 9 tackles, interception, and a sack. He has plenty of upside.
Yeah, I think he graded like off the charts too. I think he was like 10th overall in PFF for overall linebackers, and I want to say he was like top 7 or 8-ish in pass rush. I think the thing with Edge Cooper, he's going to get Jalen Walker in this draft coming up drafted extremely high because these hybrid players that can play all over the place and fill in and whatever it is, like he's a guy like no matter what happens with Quay Walker, like he's going to remain on the field. Like they're going to find a way to. He's just too talented, you know.
Right.
And some of those games were huge, right? Like especially when Quay Walker got hurt, you know, things like that. The concussion, I think, towards the end of the year, he was like Cooper was awesome. He's a guy that when you watch the Packers game, you couldn't not see him making a play, and that's he passes the eye test for IDP. I guess is the best way to sum it up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The only other rookie linebacker I enjoyed watching as much as Cooper this year was probably Overshown. Obviously, we know how that ended up, and that's a real shame. But yeah, this is a pick that I feel very happy with. And again, I'll be able to reflect back, look upon my roster at the end of the draft, and be like, yeah, I'm really happy I made that pick. He's a favorite of mine, but he's favorite for a reason. It's not just completely unfounded. So look, Joey, 204. What are you thinking?
I think I have to go with another quarterback at this point. I think I'm going to take Caleb Williams. I mean, it's obviously at 204. It's not going to be the same team that drafted Bo Nix. So I'm saying it's Caleb Williams. He's just there's too much talent. They have a lot invested in him. They have good receivers. They just need to get somebody. They just need to get that offensive line fixed. And I think they can fix that offensive line, but it's just too much talent to pass up at the beginning to middle of the second round for me.
Yeah, I'm a believer in Williams, and yeah, for the reasons I mentioned earlier on, he's in a much better situation already. With Ben Johnson, and everybody knows it's no secret whatsoever. They need to improve their offensive line. Part of that is part of the problem was Williams himself, but we know how talented he is going into year 2. Better situation, better offensive line, maybe a running back. They kind of need one.
Yeah.
I
think we'll see some maturity under Ben Johnson and kind of like what worked and what didn't. Some of that self-inflicted wound stuff of just breaking the pocket because your offensive line stinks. Like if that mentality is built in before the ball's ever snapped, you're never going to really be a true believer in what the offense is capable of. So I love that pick there. I mean, Caleb's got weapons there even now. Rookie deal and got to think that it's only going to get better and now with a really, really good play caller there. So
yeah.
But yeah, check out Joey hogging all the quarterbacks. I'm going to be left with nothing.
Sorry.
So John, 205.
All right, we're gonna keep the wide receiver train rolling. Go with Keon Coleman here. I don't anticipate. I know a lot of Bills fans want to see, Buffalo add a high-level wide receiver in free agency. I don't think that's what they want to do under Joe Brady. I mean, he's shown in some of his past roles that he's really support a high-level like target monster there. But I think we saw some special stuff out of Coleman at times last year, even offense that doesn't favor one wide receiver, but the skill set is there. I think the red zone threat alone with Allen, he's going to have tons and tons of opportunities because the Bills move the ball inside the 20 better than most of the league. So like his talent there. Brandon Beane made a good point. I think after the wrist injury, he did have a pretty big dip in not only confidence, but I think in the offense confidence. But I don't see the Bills going after like a T. Higgins or someone like that. I think they'll probably bring Cooper back on like a veteran deal type of thing. But I think their plan is, you draft a wide receiver, quote unquote, in the first round with the trade down, which was the first pick of the second round. I do still see that, Coleman's going to be a part of that offense. And, Josh Allen is, essentially QB1 every single year, or right around there. So, they're going to score points, and, you're going to want a wide receiver there that's going to have a chance to score those points. So,
yeah, love that pick. I think it's a really good value pick as well. It wasn't quite where we hoped he would be. I think at the start of the year, because he was being ranked among some of the players the receivers we've taken earlier than him in this draft so far. But yeah, like you say, his situation's really nice. So 206, I'm going to go with Chop Robinson, and he exceeded my expectations. It felt like he was pretty buried on that depth chart to start the year, and we all knew he was talented, but it was like, well, how much is he going to play? In those redraft leagues,
Right.
Certainly, I was sat there thinking, he's not really someone I'm going to be targeting. Dynasty, yeah, much more so. Can see he's a talented pass rusher, but how much is he going to play? And then all of a sudden, the C's part, he's playing a ton, and he's delivering. Right, it was much better than I imagined he was going to be, even with that increased snap count. So yeah, a big fan of Chop Robinson. I think he is. I'm actually a little surprised that he lasted this long. I expected him to go maybe a couple of picks beforehand. So I'm really pleased to get him at 206.
I almost took him instead of Caleb Williams, but I felt like that was a spot where I had to take Caleb Williams.
Yeah,
he gets to play the Jets and the Dolphins twice a year, so that's great. And he has a super cool sack dance now. But yeah, I mean that situation too, right? Jalen Phillips, love the guy, but back-to-back season-ending injuries. Bradley Chubb, that was a horrific deal for Miami. I don't know what they were thinking, but I mean, like, it's just the to your point, these are part like that. He should be the top edge rusher there, right? Like in a team that wants to score points and get after the opposing quarterback, get up on teams. So yeah, I love that pick too. I mean, there's some edges in this draft that I still really really like, even though they may not have performed versus all worldly.
Right.
And it's interesting you should mention that, because one of the things I had in the back of my mind was, where did I have Chop relative to some of these other guys going into this season, and why didn't those other guys produce? Were they in situations like Chop's? Would they have produced just as well? And I'm like, as I look back on this again a year from now, would I be massively surprised if Chop didn't outscore those other two edge guys that I'm looking at, who I know and had ranked ahead of him coming into this year, who I know are super talented? So that's a really interesting one. I feel good about the fact that I've taken him there. It feels like around about the range that I thought he would go, maybe a couple picks later. But if the other two guys ended up going sort of another round from now, I'd end up regretting the pick. It's kind of interesting. So on to 207. What are we thinking, Joey?
It might be a reach, but I think I'm going to go with Tyrese Knight. I mean, he really came on at the end of the season. Once they released Tyrell Dodson, he came on. They trade for Ernest Johnson, and he still gets 75 tackles in the last 8 games. So the guy's a tackle machine. Whether he graded well or not, he's on a rookie deal. The Seahawks are going to keep him around in that starting lineup, and he's going to play plenty. And he's there to tackle. That's all he needs to do. He's just there to tackle. And 75 tackles in 8 games is enough for me to take him in the middle of the second.
The Seattle linebacker situation has been like extremely consistent when it comes to like tackles. I mean, obviously Bob Wagner a lot because he's insane and posting like 200 a year. But like even outside of that, when we had Jordan Brooks there, and then like the short Tyrell experiment, and now and then to your point, Ernest, coming over, like you just like these guys are just putting up 10, 11, 12, like they're winning you weeks in leagues, right? Like you're not, they're scoring, they're in big, like they're scoring wide receiver numbers. So like those guys are, if you got a young guy in there and you can get them on the cheap, and you're ahead of your league by a large margin in that regard.
Yep.
Good call. John, we're with you at 208.
We talked about him a little bit after I made the verse pick, but Latu, I just loved him. I love the story. I think he was the most polished pass rusher coming out last year. His move set is it's so good, right? Like, and you can see it. And I think he had like a spike there where he had a bunch of like impact plays, but he still wasn't seeing a ton of consistent snaps. But I like him. You know, I'm a believer in him. I still think when it comes to edges, like those guys are few and far between in Dynasty League. You don't want to be stuck where you're starting like Mike Dana types down the stretch. Like, right. Like I want one of these, like, you know, these guys that I think can take over a game or have enough pass rush moves to win me a week. Right. Like, you know, force fumble, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, love the play. I think, you know, he's a guy that probably is as cheap as he's going to be is probably right now heading into next season. You know, after that, the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, I like the pick. That was kind of tossed up with him, but I went with the ultra production from Tyrese Knight. But Latu, yeah, pre-draft and even after the draft, I still love him. It was more of a situation where you knew he wasn't going to see as much time as some of the other edge rushers, just because, I mean, to start the season, you had Kwity Paye, Samson Ebukam, Ode Ingbo, sorry, and it was just crowded. So you knew he wasn't going to see as much. So, but you're right. His pass rush moves, he's so well versed. He's just polished, and he's powerful, and he's quick. So I do love the guy. And I think he has a bright future.
Yeah. I also love him. He was, you know, I had those top three edge guys ranked quite closely, I suppose. I had Latu as 1, Turner as 2, I think, and Versus 3, even though I preferred Versus landing spot. Then Turner's followed by Latu's for the reasons you mentioned there, Joey. It's just a bit of a deep like kind of run deep there at the edge spot. But yeah, I really like this pick, John, for the reasons you mentioned, and it's made my pick easier at 209 actually. With wasn't intending to take 2 running backs this early, but I think there's a bit of a drop off to some of the other defensive positions here for me after Latu. So I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy, and yeah, I struggle with this one a little bit because, as I say, the drop off from Irving to Tracy is, I feel like it's bigger than the stats suggest. But Tracy kind of came from nowhere. He was only taken, I think, 1 round later than Irving, so the draft capital isn't as awful as I imagined. I had to double check on that point, but yeah, I think what he did down the stretch. As I look back at the stats, I have to admit it wasn't quite as good as I remember it being. I remember seeing his name pop up all the time and being like, Jesus, like Tracy's doing so well. I expected to look back through his game log and see these huge games after huge games. And that wasn't quite there. But I think, again, when we're talking about offenses that are going to be better going into next season, the Giants are picking early. I'd like to think they would add to what they've got there. They've got Neighbors on one side. You know, Tracy coming in at the running back position there. I think he could have a big year too. And I think looking through my list of remaining players, I've got more confidence in what he could do in year 2 than some of these others who are kind of more, I'm projecting them to do better, projecting them to do well, but it'll be more of a leap for them than it would be for Tracy. I guess that's what it comes down to for me.
I like the pick. We're talking. You're talking potential of Matt Stafford going there too, right? Like, or at least that's like rumors. I mean, that obviously makes my neighbor's pick look great. But on top of that, I think like Kyron Williams, another guy who was not a high pick, but this guy's just absolutely delivering over the last 2 years for fantasy football purposes. So I could see Tracy fitting into a role like that. I think Brian will overall tends to kind of favor those like later round running backs. He's not looking for those feature type guys. So yeah, I like the pick there a lot.
Yeah. I don't know.
Right.
I get worried. I get worried with what the Giants are going to do in the draft. If they do trade for a quarterback, that whole GM situation, right? They just let Barkley walk, and he has the season he has. It just makes me feel like if they get a quarterback, they're just going to take Ashton Gianti in the first round early, and it's like just to kind of heal the Band-Aid from the Barkley loss. It's like, see, guys, no, we knew we were going to get this guy. That's why we let him go.
It is the Giants. So
exactly. I don't trust the Giants, which is funny because the next pick that I'm going to take here at 210 is a Giant. I'm going to go with the tight end Theo Johnson. So nice segue right into it.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
But I kind of like his skill set coming in. I mean, he's a big move tight end. He had, in the last 5 games, he wasn't overly productive, but he averaged 5 targets a game, over 5 targets a game. So, I mean, he only had, I think his highest yardage output was 54 yards, and he only had 1 touchdown during that span, but he also had horrendous quarterback play. So
yeah,
I'm not really worried about that. I like that he was getting targeted, and I think he's going to go in and they're going to draft a quarterback, and the quarterback's going to need somebody that they feel comfortable with, somebody to dump off to, somebody to check down to. And sure, you're going to have neighbors. You have Wan'Dale Robinson, but Theo Johnson impressed me a little bit in tight end premium. If you're getting 5-6 targets a game, I'll take it.
Yeah, I like it too. You're typically looking for that safety blanket there, right? Like if that does happen to not be Matt Stafford and happens to be a rookie, in that situation, you would think that he would get a larger volume in targets. And then, I think I make this point on a lot of the podcasts. These guys that come out of Penn State are just freaks. Right. Like they're just like, what I mean? It doesn't matter who they are. They seem to like their combine measurables, or when they're on the field, they just find a way to get it done and be, more athletic and more versatile than everybody else they're playing against. So
right.
I think that's a strong pick there. All
John,
right. I mean,
you
guys are just leaving me all of the ed players. Now you're going to make me take Dallas Turner now too. Yeah, another guy. I think it's a little bit more of a hybrid than we would like from like an edge. I know the Donta Hightower was kind of like of the comps that Brian Flores like saw him as kind of. But, Jason and I spoke a little bit, pre-show about never did we see a guy get I think it was like 15th overall. Never did we see a guy get taken in the first round like that, and then like 2 impending free agents like we're literally burying him on the depth chart. Between Grenard and Van Ginkel, and Van Ginkel had, I mean, obviously like a defensive player of the year type season, which I can't imagine will be the same. And I want to say I looked at PFF, it was like Dallas Turner was like 105th out of like 230 qualified snap counts. So like the snap count just wasn't there. I think the player is very good. The system with what Minnesota likes to do, get at quarterbacks and bring these exotic blitzes, him being more of a part of that, hopefully going forward. And, to my point as before, like some of these edges, I'm not against letting other people take them pretty high in the draft and maybe buying a year later, right? Like, especially like knowing that Bernard on, I think he has a potential out after 2025. Van Ginkel only signed a 2-year deal, which is at the end of next year. Obviously, you're 2 years in on Turner at that point. So if you're stashing him on your bench and hoping for the best, it gets a little slim when all your injuries and stuff are happening to keep him. But I like the player a lot. I think he's fantastic, and he's going to be a bigger part down the, as his career grows here.
Yeah, he's one of the more interesting picks in this draft, I think. Not necessarily the picks, but players to talk about, really, because he just he didn't do what we hoped he would do, I suppose. But he's an exercise, I think, or he's going to be an exercise in why we stay patient with these guys. And you can't see someone like an AVG and Grenard kind of. I know that people aren't talking about him as in the same way as someone like an AVG after what they both did last year, but people that are playing IDP know how well Grenard did. He was fantastic, and
he was very good.
Yeah, it's really hard to try and find a way to get all three on the field at once. But it's
and then you have Patrick Jones actually had himself a career year, limited snaps.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches, isn't it? Really,
it really is. Good for them, jerks.
Yeah. Not that we're bitter.
Not bitter at all.
So that makes things interesting, actually, because and I'm never putting you ahead of me in these drafts again, John. Because not to say that you've sniped me on every pick, but you've definitely taken one of the two players I've been considering with every pick after yours. So, and
I gave you the Lad McConkey one.
You did.
I did that for you.
He's like, you did, but
it doesn't quite make up for it. It's been too many times now. It's been too many times. It's like you've got my draft board. Actually, have I shared my screen in some way here? But I'm pretty happy with the player I'm going to pick here at 212. I'm going to go with. It might surprise some people actually, but Peyton Wilson. Look, Patrick Queen still stands in his way, but the way Wilson played I take a lot from these linebackers, especially in their rookie years when they come out and play beyond their years. They play really well, especially when they play well in coverage. I've got such a lower expectation now for what I expect from rookie linebackers. I do expect them to take more than a year, sometimes more than a year and a half, 2 years to become good. So when a guy comes out and plays really well in his first year, like a Ed Cooper, like a Peyton Wilson, I kind of take notice more than I would have done in years past. And Wilson was that guy that, the way he played in coverage, as I say, was impressive. He's such a fast player. Second half of the season, could he surpass Queen? I don't know, but the fact that Queen did so poorly in a lot of the areas I spoke about where Wilson did well kind of gives me hope. So yeah, I'm quite happy with my pick at 212, and I know I'm hogging some of the linebackers here, but there it is. Deal with it.
No, I love Wilson right there. And I do think he can surpass Queen because, Queen's numbers have always been impressive, but his actual gameplay has not been. That's why Baltimore let him go. They didn't really care too much about him. They didn't care about letting him go. Peyton Wilson looked better on the field than Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen, he's kind of a cleanup guy, right? He's always around the ball, but he's never in great position. He's not great in coverage. He's a good blitzer, but that's only going to get you so far. If you have bad technique and you can't cover, then you're just going to keep moving around.
Yeah, it was interesting early on to see Wilson not make the field because Landon Roberts was playing, right, which is, just horrific. But I think to coverage piece alone is why he's going to play. And Roberts has been around the league for a long time, been in New England and all those kind of dynamic, defenses. I think Wilson's ability to learn from a guy like that, and I don't think it's so much about passing on Pat Queen. I think that's just a matter of time. I think that is going to happen. My only concern with Wilson is those injuries that he kind of, with that college is how long of a shelf life are we looking at in the NFL at this level of taking those hits, making those hits and all that. But the point on Queen too is it's almost like he's around the play. So he's getting those tackles and assists and whatnot, but he's never making the play. That makes sense. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I agree. That's exactly what I'm trying to say too. Yeah. He's always there, but he's never really in the right position.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm glad you like my pick, guys. Thank you very much. 301.
It's terrible. It was the worst.
Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. Joey, 301. This is where I think it's all interesting, but this is where I think some of our boards will differ from one another more so than in these early rounds. It only makes sense. But yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what you guys do in this third round. So, all
right, so this one, especially if he's considered an interior defensive lineman, Braden Fisk. If he's listed as an IDL and you're getting 44 tackles and 8.5 sacks, that's fantastic. Even if he's listed as an edge, that's still a good season. He's part of that great young defensive line in LA, right? You have Byron Young, Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, and Braden Fisk. I mean, those four, you could literally rush four all day with that. You don't need to blitz because they're all terrific pass rushers. Like, you don't need much else. Just rush those four all game, and you have a dominant pass rush. But if he's an IDL, he could have easily gone towards the beginning of the second round. Honestly, if he's an edge, he's still a value at 301.
Yeah, the true steals of the NFL draft, honestly.
Yeah.
Like Fisk was so good last year, and I mean, we just saw it with the Eagles, right? Like the ability to rush four, you could beat the best quarterback, make the best quarterback in the game look pretty, mediocre. Right, just by getting after him with four, and the Rams especially doing that. But Fisk's sack production like blew me away. Like, I mean, as I saw it happening, as the season happened, was like, like versus still getting his, right? Like, so now you're like, how is this happening with two rookies just coming in and yeah, but great point on him. He was so good, and especially if he's DT, like, and you're playing in a defensive tackle premium. I mean, like, that is a great pick. Way to put the pressure on us for the start of the third round.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, yeah, to that point, John, who are you going to go with at 3 and 2?
We'll go back to the wide receiver and a guy I think that kind of lost it a little bit there due to the offense, Jalen Polk from New England. I still don't love what they're doing there, but I do really have confidence in Drake May. I think he's going to be good, right? And I think they're going to make some changes to that offense, and Polk had a couple moments there. I know we wanted to, it got very like vanilla, like New England's offense has over the last couple of years, but they drafted him high. I still think there's potential there. Obviously, showed it at Washington with Penix. Like, he's a player, right? Like, so I think if versus where he was taken a year ago, so the value you're getting now, that's the main justification pick. But yeah, I couldn't see him slip too much more. I do still think he's going to be a big part of that offense when they get Drake May up going. I have to worry about him getting benched for Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to go there, actually, which is why I pause. I don't know if I'm in love with any of the Patriots, the current Patriots receivers, and not that I disagree with you massively, John. I just think that they're going to add to that room, and then some of these guys are going to be pushed down. And I wonder whether Polk might be among those players. But we're at 3. We're in the third round, and every player's a bit of a gamble here. So same applies with my guy here. I'm going to go with Jatavian Sanders, and he was inconsistent last year, missed games as well. I think a couple at least. But as I kind of look forward to this season and kind of forget about the idea that Brock Bowers was so insanely good and the drop off to every other tight end was so massive, I think Sanders is the guy, or one of the guys, alongside certainly Johnson, Joey, who you took earlier on, that I could see coming and emerging in his second season. So I saw enough to keep me interested. I was interested at first. Yes, it wasn't quite the consistent year that we hoped for at least, but I wasn't expecting it to be the case, I guess. Most tight ends don't come out and, take the league by storm and break numerous rookie records like a Bowers. And so, yeah, kind of someone like a Sanders I can definitely see taking a giant stride in his second year. And for that reason, yeah, I think 303 is about right for where I think he should be taken in these rookie drafts.
Yeah, I like that. I thought about him earlier, around when I was thinking like Theo Johnson. I was like, tight end premium, and we talked about Bryce Young. I mean, he has Bryce Young as his quarterback. He is a good receiving tight end. If he could block a little better, get himself in the field a little more, it would be nice. But I love his receiving upside in an offense that isn't fully loaded on offensive talent.
That guy's a freak athlete. I remember, so yeah. I'm a bit of a degenerate. So I play in some crazy leagues heavy leagues where you're recruiting guys or draft guys that are in high school. I remember when he played defensive tackle, and the plan was for him to play like like defensive tackle or edge at Texas. And
Really?
he was recruited as an athlete, yeah. But like his size is so crazy, and then getting with Sark and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool, you know, showing age. But like when you're able to see a guy from, you know, being drafted as like or you know, entering a college campus as a high school senior, and he's legitimately like on your Devi team as like, you know, ATH, like an athlete, like you're playing college
Like,
football.
we don't know where he's going to play, but you're going to draft
Yes.
him anyway.
Yes, and seeing he is now is like it's kind of cool. So, but yeah, I love the pick too.
All right. I think one of you two is going to make me regret. As much as I feel okay with that pick, and I think it's a good value to in terms of taking Sanders there, I think one of you two is going to make me regret passing over someone else. So it's going to be interesting. I'm gonna say that up front, so that when you do it, I can be like, I hate you. Joey, 304.
I'm going to take Tyler Nubin.
All right.
He had 98 tackles in 13 games. He did have ankle surgery, but he should be fine. He's one of the constants in that Giants defense that you know is going to be there. He's coming off of great rookie year. He's still in his rookie contract. He's going to be leading that defense pretty much. And I think 98 tackles in 13 games is great to work off of. So I'll take him in the third round for sure.
John, I know you're a fan.
Yeah, really special at one point. I want to say it was like 4 or 5 straight games with 20 points or more. I think in Big Three scoring. Like he was my pre-draft DB. Me and Macri talked about that, and obviously like Xavier McKinney leaving, like that was like the perfect situation for him to go in. And and another like really accomplished college player, like a guy who played, you know, extra years because of COVID and the pandemic and all that stuff. All that stuff really like helped him transition to the NFL like immediately. And that's one of those things, you know, Jason and I were talking about what we learned, right? Like what can we take from this and learn is those DBs, right? Like those linebackers that we're waiting on, like it doesn't seem like we're waiting on DBs. You know, it seems like some of those guys are on the field a lot more, and they're able to kind of come in and be consistent and, you know, give you instant production. And I know we tend to feed those at times because there's so many. Right. But like, there's not so many that are producing, you know, a month straight of 20 points or more.
Right. You had 3 straight games of 12 tackles. It's like,
yeah, that's not many linebackers are doing that, let alone, you know, safeties. So,
right.
Would it make you take any of the current safety crop any earlier than you would have done otherwise, Joey?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Situation plays a huge part of that, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. You know. Like pre-draft, I probably would had him like maybe 4th round, I want to say, and then post-draft, it was probably in the 3rd round still. But I mean, I feel like getting him in the 3rd round now is a steal.
Yeah. Yep. So, John, your guy is gone. I know you love Nubin. So what's your thoughts at 305?
I guess I'll get in on this running back stuff. Jalen Wright was a guy that I really like here. I don't know if Mostert's still there. I apologize, I didn't look that up. But you know, I think as great as A-Chain is, like, there needs to be a hammer. Right, like, and I think Jalen Wright's gonna probably be that guy long term. They spent the draft capital to make that happen. I think 2 years ago, or whatever it was, when Mostert had 20 touchdowns or something like that. I'm not saying Jalen Wright's going to be that guy. I do like his game. I think he fits the NFL and, you know, McDaniel's offense well. So hopefully they don't have another horrific year and we have to worry about McDaniel getting fired. I like Jalen Wright. I think he showed some flashes there, nowhere near to say like, you know, this guy's a great dynasty asset going forward. But again, being in the 3rd round here, you're kind of taking some shots, and to get a running back on a good high scoring offense when Tua is healthy, I like the pick here, upside. Yeah,
I got a bunch of A-Chain in a bunch of leagues, and Wright was a guy that was worrying me because every time I saw him, he's electrifying. Right, he's got that home run potential. He looks fantastic. yeah, it kind of proved over the course of the season I didn't have to worry too much about A-Chain. But yeah, Wright is clearly a very talented guy, and I think at 305, I think it's a really good pick.
Yeah, definitely. And that offense it's still going to be explosive. McDonald's still a good coach. I mean, as long as Tua stays healthy, that offense should be okay. Always the question mark there, but yeah, I like the 1-2 punch of Wright and Achane. Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, I'm kind of in a situation where I've got a pick of a bunch of guys who I have similar value on, and it's tough here. There's, I mean, this isn't a real draft, so I can throw some names out here without fear of being pipped. But yeah, Jalen Coker, I'm interested in. Obviously, JJ McCarthy. I'm kind of like dropping McCarthy in some ways because we haven't really seen him. Yeah, we obviously haven't seen him at all yet. But the guy I'm going to go with is Cooper DeJean, and I just, it's kind of like a bit of a luxury pick here, if you like. I wouldn't ordinarily take a DB this early, but the way he's trended towards the end of the year there just cannot be ignored. Extremely productive, extremely good player. I feel like if I didn't take him here, one of you guys would be taking him in the next couple of picks because we clearly weren't going to get through to the 12th pick in the third round without somebody taking him.
Right.
And yeah, I feel quite happy with this. I was quite intrigued to see where you guys had him on your boards. Where, now that he's gone, where did you have him out of interest?
Right about right there. It was a toss up with one of my next few picks. So my next pick was going to be him, or I have two guys that I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between in this next couple of seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I like Hooper a lot. I just think he's a cornerback, right? Like that was the big fight. Like when the hype was so big, like pre-draft, was like I think it was on Macri's podcast. Not like he's not going to play safety. I want everyone to know he's not going to play safety. Yeah. Like yeah, so but electric. My biggest concern with Cooper, people are not going to throw the ball at him because he's that good in coverage. Like he's that good, right? Like, I mean, we saw it as it took to the Super Bowl for the best guy in the game to test him to get first interception. Yeah. And what did he do with it? He took it to the house, right? Like the punt return. Like if you're playing in leagues with like punt return yardage and stuff like that, that guy is a steal, right? Like, cause I think he's going to, until like if an injury or something happens, but he's going to be their punt returner too. So, but yeah, phenomenal player. Like, I mean, make no bones about it. We talked about the Eagles front four, but drafting Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean won them that Super Bowl. Like, I mean, you drafted a lockdown corner and another guy who is so phenomenal out of the slot. It's ridiculous. Like, but I get a little nervous IDP wise because like, is the tackle volume going to be there? Because I don't think the interceptions are ever going to be there because like consistently because of how good he is. Like, and it's not like any fault to him. It's just he's that good.
I mean, I hate to go off the rails a little bit, but have you ever seen his high school basketball tape?
Yeah. Insane.
It's mind blowing. The man is kid is so athletic.
How he wasn't a first round pick, I just don't understand. Like, I know the injury, but like other than that, like, I mean, you think of all the teams, like look at the Bills, right? Struggled so bad to put a corner on the field in that Kansas City game, and it's like you could have had that kid, right? Like, so, but yeah, I mean, phenomenal player. I mean, like maybe I'm wrong, right? Like, and if he some like a Teron Johnson type role, like Buffalo, like where he's kind of like the slot guy there, and you know they're sending him on all these blitzes and all that kind of stuff. He is so talented and athletic that you can do that stuff. So I think from an IDP standpoint, he could still put up some big seasons. But you know, my concern is how good he is in coverage, and quarterbacks are going to kind of tend to not throw at him. But Quinn Mitchell's good too. Got a real problem, man.
Like you say, those two guys just turn them from being one of. You know, I was looking at the other day. It was something like it was well over 1,000 yards less, pass yards less they surrendered in in 2024
Oh, really?
compared to 2023. And yeah, that secondary was a big reason for. I know the pass rush gets a lot of the credit for what they did, as they should do in the Super Bowl, but that secondary, they've got to hold up on the back end to give those pass rushers time to get after the likes of Mahomes. And yeah, Mitchell, Slay upped his game as well.
Yeah.
But DeJean, you're right to raise the. You don't need me to tell you to raise those concerns, John. And I understand what you're saying. Part of what gave me some comfort in taking him at this point was the fact that he is just almost he's purely a slot guy. And that that does tend to lead to that better tackle volume, which we know about. But yeah, it is a toughie when you look at some of the other guys, because of this list of other offensive players that we have left. I've got a couple of linebackers on my list as well. We know that some of these guys are going to take that leap, and they're going to become instantly more valuable than the guy I've taken here. So why don't you, Joey, tell us who you've got at 307, who's going to be a way better pick than the one I've got here?
Well, I don't know if it's going to be a way better, but it's almost like an insurance pick. Isaac Redraft. I mean, Jordan Mason's a restricted free agent. Christian McCaffrey's coming off a season where his injuries just couldn't keep him on the field. And Guarendo, when he was in there, he's averaging 5 yards a carry. He was explosive. He showed he could be an every down back, and in an offense that generally produces great production for their running backs. I think it's a great pick, especially if McCaffrey is not healthy. And every season it's almost like, is McCaffrey healthy? We don't know.
Yeah.
Going into the season, I took him 101 in a couple of drafts, like 1 QB drafts, and then next thing you know, oh yeah, by the way, his Achilles is a little sore. This is a little sore. He's going to miss some time. And it's like, oh, geez. We saw what Jordan Mason did when he got his chance. Now he's a restricted free agent. When he had his opportunities, he produced. So if anything happens to McCaffrey, Guarendo goes in there and he's instantly an impact player. And who knows what happens when McCaffrey's contract's up. Guarendo's on a rookie deal. They don't really draft running backs high at all. They like those middle round running backs. So I could see him potentially being very useful.
I'd be going to grab anyone in like that Shanahan type system, even going back to when his dad was with Denver, right? The Mike Andersons, and like those type of guys. Just seems like whoever they put in there, and Christian McCaffrey is like the leap year of fantasy football production at this point. Like every 3 years, you get you get that running back one season, and
literally the definition of boom or bust, but not because he's not performing well, just because he doesn't play. But yeah, I'll always have a soft spot for McCaffrey. I will not hear this slander.
Being a 49ers fan, it's so difficult because he's so good. And when he's on the field, he makes your team so much better. Just he needs to stay on the field.
Agreed.
Yep. So, John, 308.
Time to get in on the tight end premium stuff. I'm gonna go with Ben Sinnott here. I like the upside there. Ertz. I'm not sure if Ertz signed a 2-year deal there, but obviously getting up there in age. Another thing with Jaden Daniels being dual like that is seemed like he went to Ertz quite a bit in the red zone. I think he had a pretty good touchdown level type season for him. So Sinnott, obviously we saw almost nothing from last year with Ertz kind of being in there as a veteran, which probably helped Jaden Daniels quite a bit, understanding coverages and being open and finding the zones and all that kind of stuff. But the ups there, Cliff Kingsbury is going to utilize every weapon that he has. He's kind of shown that in some of his previous roles. So like him here, tight end premium. Obviously some dart throws that we're making right now, but with the scoring in the leagues, needing a tight end to kind of compete, and you guys took them all already. So I'm gonna take the last one before we get out of here.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've gone with I've kind of changed my mind a little bit as you were explaining your pick there, John, with my next pick at 308, and there's a lot of reasons not to like this pick. I'll be honest and up front. So I've gone with Junior Colson. I've got my Junior Colson, and reasons not to like it. Didn't play well. Didn't play very much. Very injured for much of the year, and Henley's there doing his thing, and I'm a big Henley believer. But I feel like, again, we get into these latter picks in the third round, there's massive question marks over everybody here. I probably should have taken McCarthy or Drake May, given that I don't currently have a quarterback on my roster. But I'm going to follow up with what I believed in, I guess, going into the draft last year. I really liked Colson. I feel like if there wasn't that Harbaugh, Jesse Minter connection, then I might be more concerned with what we saw last year than I would be otherwise. But I feel like these are his guys. He's clearly their guy. I think there's much more to come from Colson, and I think this year could be that year. I've made no secret of my disdain for Perryman as a player, unlikely to be around this season. So I think maybe this, we saw that sort of division of duties three-way split between those three linebackers to start the year before Henley emerged. I think that could become a 2 this year, and I'd like to see a more kind of traditional kind of like single full-time linebacker in Henley, and then Colson coming up. Colson in that sort of like 70% snap share type of area. So yeah, I think there's more to come.
Probably to my point on Latu too, probably like another guy that's probably as low as his value is going to be for a while, like maybe over the next couple of years.
Right.
Excellent point on the Minter Harbaugh thing, right? Like they drafted him for a reason, right? Like they know all about him, they know his story, they know his skill set. Like he's gonna find a way to be on the field. And yeah, I mean, I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan, so like I know a bit about Enzo Perryman, unfortunately. So
Yeah, Harbaugh obviously likes the guy, right? So he drafted him. He was his coach in college. So it's not like having a bad rookie season is going to be like Harbaugh's going to be like, oh, that's right, you're talentless. No, he already knows what he has. He knows what he has in that player. He knows where he needs to improve, and it's somebody that he has confidence in. So I think that connection right there is good enough to draft in there.
Yeah. So 3-10.
This
Joey.
may also be another reach of a running back, but I'm going to go Ray Davis. I mean, it's kind of in the light of James Cook's contract and him asking for $15 million a year. Does Buffalo want to pay him that much? I mean, Davis had 500 yards last year with Cook having his great season. He showed he can run between the tackles, and he had some receiving ability. So I don't know. It's kind of standalone. He was still like a RB3, RB4, and if something happens where they can't pay Cook and Davis can step into a bigger role, then it's almost a steal at the end of the third.
Yeah, it seems like Buffalo keeps doing that too, right? Like just like third and fourth round running backs, and you know, play out your rookie deal and then move on, right? Like so, I think Cook is a bit of an exception there. I think given his skill set, he like fits that offense so well. Yeah. But when you got a guy asking for like Christian McCaffrey, like Saquon Barkley type money, like that obviously becomes a bit of a tougher conversation. But did I saw on spurts from Ray Davis last year and think he definitely fits. I mean, anybody probably fits with Josh Allen at this point. Right. Fits kind of like just playing in that offense, and he'll get volume touches, and especially in the red zone. To my point before on Coleman, the team moves the ball so well. So.
Yeah, I like this pick for the reasons you mentioned there. Again, his value's kind of capped in redraft with Cook there for another year, but yeah, 15 mil, a lot of money, making the second highest paid running back in the NFL behind only McCaffrey, which is I know he was good. I know he was really good. 16 touchdowns last year, and big part of their success on offense. But even so, I think Ray Davis could be a great pick here, depending on how that situation unravels. And in Dynasty, I'd be taking him well before the 310. So, love this, Joey. John, your last pick.
Last pick, I will go with Mike Sanders still, another Michigan guy. Really liked him this year. altogether. I know there was some kind of hate there. He was pretty good, like coming out, but then they were worried about what he was gonna play, all this kind of stuff. But I think third overall in solo tackles, so around like 70 or 75 or something like that last year. Another guy passes the eye test, right? Seems to be always around the ball, making plays. I don't think that's going to change with that Commanders defense. They're only going to get better. So loved his tackling upside there. Obviously, cornerback is not one that we're often advocating for, other than the formats that require it. But Sanders still is a guy too that multiple times from a streaming option at DB. I think I had plugged him in a ton of times last year and did not disappoint. So pretty happy with this pick here. Once Joey took my favorite DB off the board, I had to kind of counter with something. So happy to get one before we wrapped up here. But yeah, I like Sanders still a lot, kind of going forward.
Yeah, crazy productive from that DB spot, and yeah, he's looking like a great pick for the Commanders, and again, big part of their success in 2024.
Absolutely.
I should be taking a quarterback here, but I'm just gonna see what's left at the bottom of the barrel after we finish this draft. So I am gonna go with Jalen Coker, because I wanted to take one undrafted free agent, and not just to make the point that we need to remain open-minded to this idea that we don't know everything going into every fantasy draft, and there's always going to be some surprises there. But in no way did I imagine myself tying myself to these Panthers pass catches with Jatavian Sanders and then Coco. I do expect Leggett to be the guy, I guess, in Carolina next year. So I loved that earlier pick that one of you guys made. I think it was you, John. But Coco had some really surprisingly good games at times last year when he was playing, and I think again the 312. It's a gamble I'm willing to take as I look through my list of other players, and we'll talk about some of the guys we have remaining. But Coker is as likely to succeed as the rest of the players remaining on my list.
Yeah, like he did have some big games during the season with Carolina, and I mean, like we talked earlier, they have pass catchers, like unproven pass catchers. So it's like it's going to be a battle for position. Honestly, like this offseason is going to be a battle of who's going to start this season, and do they keep Adam Thielen around? Do they try to trade him to a contender? Like, it could be a wide open wide receiver room.
I think you love it to the point because you see Bryce Young improving, right? So that healthy competition there is good because the guy delivering the ball is getting better, right? Like he's getting through his reads faster. He's able to make these throws that, again, like we didn't think were possible a season ago. So, and then I think, Coker got caught up in a little bit of the hype because we love to do this as dynasty analysts, that when there is an undrafted free agent, he is like the second coming of Randy Moss, of course. Like, so when he has those games, to hype him up to that point, but do realize like he was probably undrafted for a reason, right? Like, so let the guy grow. Like, let's wait, year two, maybe into year before we're like, this guy's a legitimate NFL player, skill position player who's going to demand targets. So, I love the pick. Honestly, the upside's there. It's an offense that is young and it's exciting, and they're only going to keep adding to it. And having those healthy competition at pass catchers, if you keep upgrading, say the offensive line or whatever it may be, it's just going to be more time for Bryce to be able to get those guys the ball. So,
should I have been taking him over though, and to start talking about some of the guys who remain on our lists? Second round wide receiver Adonai Mitchell was someone I was considering at that point, and if I run through the rest of the players, Drake May, Deshaun Vele, McCarthy, Braylon Allen, Trevin Wallace, Omar Spates. We talked about Brooks earlier, John. It's obviously in Dynasty we would have been taking a gamble on him as potentially the best running back in that class, but obviously looking like he's going to miss 2025.
Right.
Quarterback in Atlanta, whose name I forget.
Michael
Penix, yeah. Marshawn Lloyd, Estime, Trey Benson. Did you guys consider any of these guys?
I like Trey Benson.
As you look back, would you have taken them any earlier if I don't know. If I'd have gone in a different route, maybe with someone like a Cooper DeJean there with 306.
I do like Trevin Wallace and Trey Benson, both those guys, and I also like Malik Washington. I like him going in. He's probably going to take that slot role in Miami. I mean, he has to beat River Covercraft and Braxton Berrios, so I don't think there's much competition there for him to take that spot. Granted, he still has to compete with Waddle and Tyreek Hill for looks, and now apparently, what's his freaking name? The tight end. Why am I blank on his name? He just out of the nowhere had a fantastic year this year. Jonnu Smith. Thank you. Yeah. Jonnu Smith. Like, unbelievable. Like, he outbeat Kyle Pitts, and then he comes over to Miami and just balls out again. It's like, where did this guy come from? Like, this is what he was supposed to be 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But either way, I mean, Malik Washington's a guy who could get some looks. So I like Malik Washington. Trey Benson is kind of a guy. I know they just re-signed James Conner, but he started coming on later in the season this year, and he played well. So if Connor gets injured at all, Benson's going to go in and he's going to take over that role, and he's going to be pretty much a bell cow back like Benson is, or like Connor is. So Trevin Wallace is a guy I'm kind of excited about. I mean, that Panthers defense is kind of disheveled. There's not much on there, and he had some big games. I think he had a 15 tackle game as a rookie, and it kind of gives them the ability. I do think they still need to add to the position, but I think he's a guy that he'll be a starter next year, I think.
Yeah, I'm like, admittedly, like I was on these running backs because I do think I would have taken a good amount of them. I mean, Benson, Marshawn Lloyd, Blake Corum, you know what I mean? Like Jonathan Brooks, obviously pre-ACL. Taking those guys probably in some of these spots, even towards the end of my draft over, some of these guys. But I'm really, I'll be honest, I'm nervous about the 2025 draft because it is loaded from top to bottom with running back. Right. And I don't even know where I would place these guys amongst those guys because I think it's a really talented class coming in. And, I don't know, where does a Marshawn Lloyd or a Blake Corum fit in there, right? It's tough, man. I think there's some landing spots that we don't know that are going to get affected so much that I kind of shied away from some of them. Benson was probably the one I think that maybe one of us should have probably taken, kind of hindsight 2020 right now. But again, even last year, not dealing with any injuries or anything like that, and James Conner comes in at 30 years old, it's a magnificent season. And even when he got hurt at times, it's like they would go to I forget the guy's name, DeMarco or
Amari. DeMarco.
Yeah, something. Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, but if he's listening, I know he's not. I apologize.
But even that, right? You drafted a young, talented running back to come in, and then kind of going to some of these veterans. So that stuff's definitely worrisome from a dynasty standpoint, and especially running back, right? The shelf life is so short, and if you're giving away a healthy rookie season, it definitely has to be a cause for concern on our end.
And last question before we do wrap up, then, guys. So, as we look at this year's class, is there anybody that you would be drafting much higher or much lower than you would have otherwise, following the lessons you've learned, looking back at last year's draft? And the lessons you've learned from maybe some of the mistakes and some of the huge successes you had in last year's draft. Is there anyone that you have ranking much higher or much lower because of those lessons learned?
Still think it's team dependent, right? For me, right? If I'm looking at each team and when I'm drafting, I know the answer is yes, right? Because DBs performed well or because edges performed well. But, every year's fluid. We go through exercises where we have years where the DBs look off the charts and they don't perform well, right? I would say for these experiences and things that we go through is what is the data telling us? Is the data telling us that rookie edge rushers that are drafted in the first round are X amount of likely to have a top even 36 season, right? Being somewhere in that top, 36 of defensive line. I don't think any of these past drafts do that because we have we're so offensive focused. I think a lot of the stuff you're learning is on the IDP side, and that's still really, there's no doubt about it. I think like Edrin Cooper is one of the most talented linebackers in that draft last year, but we were all still super concerned, right? He had a very small sample size of what he did, and then when you see him on the field, the NFL setting, he's like, oh yeah, he fits, right? Like, and then we see a Junior Colson who, like, hey, we saw this guy dominate in a championship type level performance, and then he comes to the NFL and he can't even get on the field, right? Like, so it's not as chalk as we would like to make it. I guess the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and
really good point,
kind of
John. There, and sorry, Joey, go on.
I was going to say, to kind of peel off of that, is when you're looking at rookie drafts and you're looking at IDP, it's almost better to wait a little bit on those linebackers, because overdrafting on a linebacker, it's hard for them to see the field unless a team is incredibly needy. Like, that's like one of your most dependent spots on a defense, right? You're in the middle of the defense, you're kind of running the defense, you're making tackles. If things get past you, it's the last line of defense, and like, it's very important position for the defense, and it's hard for a rookie to get big run as a rookie, but it's hard for them to actually see the field and get heavy playing time as a rookie is what I'm trying to say. So don't overdraft linebacker over some of these other guys, like over edge players, over maybe some of these 1A, 1B running backs, some of these wide receiver 2-3s, get them first, and then you might even be able to get a guy like a Trevin Wallace or a Tyrese Knight late, somebody who gets drafted to a better situation, might not be the better player, but he gets drafted to a better situation.
Yeah, even, Spates coming on last year.
Right.
Obviously with better help, but yeah, just playing it, again, like feeding off of your point there, Joey. Some of these guys can surprise, come from nowhere. Zach Bourne. Wow.
Yeah.
Special
from nowhere. Just finished writing him up, and his story is just phenomenal if you look at it from.
If Vic Fangio likes a linebacker, then he's going to play. So just if he's talking up a linebacker, believe the hype. He's going to play him. Yeah.
Well, look, guys, that was a lot of fun. And we thank you for coming to do this with us. It's appreciated. But before we do wrap up, please tell us and tell our lovely audience what content they can look forward to from you guys this off season and going ahead into 2025.
Go ahead, Jen.
You can find all my work at dynastynerds.com. We do have a round DP rookie mock coming out in the next couple weeks with the fabulous Joey the Tooth, who will be contributing to that. But again, thank you very much for having me on, Jace. This, I think, is our second time podcasting this year. Both times have been an absolute blast, and getting to kind of pick your brain a little bit in the the pre-show and kind of bounce ideas back and forth is a little bit better than just kind of giving each other crap on Twitter, direct messaging and stuff like that. So, but yeah, a blast to kind of come on and contribute, and don't really get to sit down and do exercises like this. We're all kind of focused on our own work and content at times. So getting some of those collaboration type stuff is really cool, and really awesome. A blessing to kind of be able to hang out with you guys and talk IDP for a while.
Best thing about this.
Yeah,
just the opportunity to do that.
And it's been nice because there's been a core group of us that have been around IDP together now for, I want to say like at least 4 years for all of us together. And it's been kind of nice because it's like you form, I don't want to say it like a brotherhood, but it is like a brotherhood. Like, we've all been very close for so long now that it's just like, it's nice to see IDP finally like smoothing out into like, yeah, we all do get along. We're all in this for the same thing. We're all having fun. That's the thing. Like, we're having fun doing this, and it's just enjoyable.
Yeah,
we're not all crazy. IDP people aren't all crazy. I promise. We're degenerates, but we're not crazy.
We are a little bit, but just not, just not massively. But yeah, look, I mean, everyone go follow these guys. I know I say it every week, but I say every week because we only have the best guests on this show. These two are a great example of that. So yeah, believe me when I say that you're doing yourself a massive favor. If you follow these two, go and look at their work, Follow them in season.
Footballguys.com. Footballguys.com.
Wait, I forgot to plug myself right there. For our 25 projections, my first round of projections are live already, and we're starting to get our rookie rankings up. And me and Kyle Bellafuel, get better, buddy. We are starting our pre-draft top 10s for each positions. I got the defensive backs and the edge rushers coming up, and he has interior defensive linemen and linebackers he's doing. And then post-draft, we get together and we rank our top 40, and we do a top 40 IDP big board. So that's what we have going on for this offseason.
Nice. I love it when I see people split out these defensive linemen into the interior and the edge guys as well for those 5-position leagues. So looking forward to that.
That'll be fun.
So yeah, go follow these guys. I'll be back next week, taking a look at the week after next, taking a look at the 2025 rookie DB class. In the meantime, Josh, Addy, and Bob will be on next week, taking an early look at this year's rookie crop as they take you through the pre-combine rookie mock draft. So as I always say, subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube to make sure you don't miss out when these episodes drop. For now, thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.
This was the IDP After Show.